Along the central coast of California, the land rises sharply from the Pacific Ocean. The mountains here form a rugged wall along the shoreline. Cliffs drop directly toward the water, sometimes hundreds of feet below the road. This region is known as Big Sur. The coastline stretches for nearly 100 miles between the towns of Carmel and San Simeon. Much of the terrain remains undeveloped. Forested ridges descend toward rocky beaches where waves break continuously against the shore. Travel through the area follows a single road, the Pacific Coast Highway. In many places the highway is cut directly into the mountainside. Drivers move along narrow lanes bordered by rock on one side and open ocean on the other. Guardrails exist in some sections, but not everywhere. The views are wide and open. The road curves constantly, following the shape of the cliffs. During summer months, the highway attracts travelers from across the United States and beyond. Some drive the route slowly, stopping at overlooks along the way. Others pass through without stopping, continuing north or south along the coast. Despite the traffic, large sections of Big Sur remain isolated. Cell service disappears in many places. Houses and businesses are spaced far apart. In certain stretches, a driver can travel several miles without seeing a building. Fog from the Pacific can roll inland quickly. Wind from the ocean moves across the cliffs. At night the region becomes quiet and dark, with little artificial light. It is a landscape that appears calm from a distance but demands caution from anyone traveling through it. In July of 2018, a 19-year-old woman was driving along this road alone. Her name was Angela Hernandez. Angela Hernandez lived in Southern California. Like many young drivers in the state, she was familiar with long highway trips. California's road system connects cities separated by hundreds of miles, and driving between them is common. In early July 2018, Hernandez began traveling north along the California coast. The Pacific Coast Highway has long been known as one of the most scenic drives in North America. Travelers follow the shoreline as the road curves along cliffs overlooking the ocean. The route passes through coastal towns, forests, and long stretches of undeveloped land. Drivers often make the journey slowly, stopping to take photographs or to explore small beaches and viewpoints. By July 6, Hernandez had reached the Big Sur region. The road there becomes more demanding. Curves tighten. Elevation changes quickly. In some places the pavement runs directly along the cliff edge. The Pacific Ocean lies far below. Many accidents along this highway occur because drivers misjudge curves or become distracted by the scenery. The California Highway Patrol regularly warns travelers to remain focused on the road. On that day, Hernandez continued north along the coastline. Traffic moved through the region as usual. Tourists drove through the area, and local residents traveled between towns. The afternoon progressed without incident. What happened next occurred along a remote stretch of the highway south of Big Sur. According to Hernandez's later account, an animal moved across the road in front of her vehicle. The sudden movement caused her to react. Within seconds, the car left the pavement. When a vehicle leaves the Pacific Coast Highway along the Big Sur cliffs, there is rarely much space for recovery. The terrain dropped sharply toward the ocean. After Hernandez swerved, the car moved beyond the edge of the roadway. Instead of stopping, it continued down the steep slope. The vehicle rolled down the mountainside. The drop was estimated at around 200 feet. Rocks, loose soil, and coastal vegetation lined the slope below the road. The car descended rapidly before finally coming to rest near the base of the cliff, close to the rocky shoreline. The crash caused significant damage to the vehicle. Hernandez later reported that she lost consciousness during the fall. When she regained awareness, the surroundings were unfamiliar and disorienting. Above her, the highway remained hidden beyond the steep slope of the cliff. Below, the Pacific Ocean stretched out across the horizon. She was alone. The vehicle had come to rest among rocks and dense coastal vegetation. The position of the car made it difficult to move freely inside. Hernandez had sustained injuries during the crash. Details about the exact injuries remain limited in public reports, but she later described being physically weak and in pain. At that moment, there was no clear path back to the road above. The cliff was steep and unstable. And the highway remained far overhead. After regaining consciousness, Hernandez began to assess her surroundings. The crash site was hidden from view of the road. Anyone driving along the highway above would not easily see the wreckage below. The steep slope and vegetation concealed much of the area from above. Her vehicle remained damaged and immobile. Hernandez eventually exited the car and attempted to climb the slope toward the highway. The climb proved difficult. The terrain consisted of loose dirt, rocks, and dry coastal plants that did not provide stable footing. Each attempt to move upward required significant effort, and the slope often forced her back down. After repeated attempts, Hernandez realized she could not reach the road. She was stranded at the base of the cliff. One immediate concern was water. Without access to drinking water, survival would become difficult within days. While exploring the area near the crash site, Hernandez located a small source of fresh water. Water trickled down the hillside through vegetation before flowing toward the rocks near the shoreline. This water source became critical. She used it to stay hydrated during the days that followed. Food, however, was unavailable. The vehicle did not contain supplies, and the environment around the crash site offered little to eat. Hernandez would later report surviving without food for nearly the entire period. Time passed slowly. Above her, vehicles continued traveling along the Pacific Coast Highway. From her position below the cliff, however, she could not easily signal to them. The road remained distant and hidden by the steep terrain. Daylight brought heat and exposure to the sun. Nights became cold as ocean winds moved across the shoreline. Hernandez remained near the crash site, conserving energy and returning repeatedly to the small water source. Days began to blend together. As the days passed, Hernandez's strength gradually declined. Without food, her body relied only on limited energy reserves. Movement became slower and more difficult. She attempted again to climb the cliff toward the highway. Each attempt ended the same way. The slope was too steep, and loose rocks made progress unstable. Falling during a climb could cause further injury. Eventually, Hernandez focused on staying near the crash site and the freshwater trickle that allowed her to remain hydrated. The Pacific Ocean lay only a short distance away, but the rocky shoreline made travel difficult. During daylight hours she remained exposed to the sun. At night temperatures dropped significantly along the coast. The crash site offered limited shelter. Meanwhile, above the cliffs, traffic continued moving along the highway. Drivers passed by without knowing that someone remained stranded below them. The wrecked vehicle was hidden by the slope and vegetation. From the road above, there was no clear sign of the accident. Hernandez spent several days in this isolated environment. Her later statements suggested that nearly a week passed between the crash and the moment she was discovered. During that time she continued to drink from the freshwater source and attempted to conserve her strength. But her condition was steadily weakening. By the later days of her isolation, Hernandez was experiencing severe physical exhaustion. Without food, her body had little energy remaining. Standing and walking required increasing effort. Even short movements across the rocks left her tired. Time also became difficult to measure. Without a clock or clear routine, days blended together. Sunrise and sunset marked the only reliable passage of time. Despite her condition, Hernandez remained alive. The presence of fresh water had prevented dehydration, which often becomes the most immediate danger in survival situations. Still, the situation remained uncertain. The crash site remained hidden below the highway. There was no guarantee that anyone would discover the wreckage from above. Search efforts were underway during this period. Hernandez's family had reported her missing after losing contact with her. Authorities were attempting to locate her vehicle. However, the coastline around Big Sur covers a large area, and locating a vehicle that had gone over the cliffs was difficult. For Hernandez, the days continued to pass with no visible sign of rescue. Nearly a week after the crash, 2 hikers were exploring the coastline below the cliffs near Big Sur. While walking along the rocky shoreline, they noticed something unusual among the vegetation on the slope. A damaged vehicle. The hikers approached the wreckage to investigate. Inside and around the car, they found Hernandez alive. Emergency services were immediately contacted. Rescue teams arrived at the scene shortly afterward. Due to the steep terrain, extracting Hernandez required careful coordination. She was eventually brought up from the cliffside area and transported to a nearby hospital. Medical evaluations showed that she had survived the crash and the following days with injuries but without life-threatening trauma. The discovery ended nearly a week of isolation along the remote coastline. After recovering in the hospital, Angela Hernandez spoke briefly about the accident and the days that followed. She explained that during the fall she lost consciousness, which meant she had little memory of the exact moment when the car went over the cliff. The next clear moment she remembered was waking up inside the damaged vehicle at the bottom of the slope. In later interviews, Hernandez said that once she realized where she was, her attention shifted immediately to survival. The situation around her was quiet. The highway above could not be seen from the crash site, and the ocean was visible only a short distance away. She stated that she focused on finding water and trying to understand whether it was possible to climb back up the cliff. During those days below the highway, Hernandez later said she tried to remain calm and concentrate on small, practical steps, drinking water, conserving energy, and attempting to move when she had enough strength. Her account suggested that survival depended less on a single dramatic decision and more on continuing to act, even in a very limited environment. Nearly a week after the crash, hikers walking along the shoreline noticed the wrecked vehicle and discovered her alive. The accident along the Big Sur cliffs became one of the most widely reported survival incidents associated with the Pacific Coast Highway. It demonstrated how quickly a person can disappear from sight along the rugged coastline, and how survival sometimes depends on a few small conditions: access to water, shelter from the elements, and the chance that someone eventually passes close enough to notice.